Hey everybody, welcome to the Bernina L460 Serger manual. Today I want to take a close look at one of the patented features on this serger. I'm going to be working on page 21 and we're talking about the MTC or micro thread control feature. This is a really cool fine-tuning adjustment that's available on the L460 serger, and I started playing around with it and I'm kind of impressed with it because while you could adjust your stitch to get it to look right using your tension settings, it's almost easier to take advantage of the micro thread control instead of fussing around with your tension settings. So the first thing I want to do is show you. I have 3 samples stitched out here and I'm going to show you what this setting does. All right, so let's start with this one. I started with the MTC set at neutral and I stitched on this fabric edge using a cutting width of 6.0. And you can see, if you look closely, the looper threads are hanging off the edge of the fabric. I used different colors for each thing so you can see what is contributing to the stitch. So if you look closely here, the light gray thread is the left needle, the green thread is the right needle, and then the black thread is the upper looper. And if I turn it around, you can see the red thread is the lower looper. And I think from this side you may be able to see more clearly that the stitches are hanging off the edge of the fabric. So traditionally, without the MTC fine-tuning adjustment feature, you could adjust this stitch by either increasing the cutting width or tightening the tension of the upper and lower thread equally, because it is balanced and matched. It's just hanging off the edge of the fabric. So instead of fussing around with that, I adjusted the MTC to the minus setting. And you'll notice here, with the minus setting, everything else being the same, you can see the threads are now, the looper threads are now joining right at the cut edge. Isn't that cool? And then just to show you, I played it in the opposite direction. So if adjusting the micro thread control to the negative would fix the stitch, then it makes sense if I adjusted the MTC in the opposite or plus direction, it would make the problem worse. And actually it did. So let's look at this one. You can see on this one, the threads are really hanging off the edge here. Okay, so that's with the MTC in the plus position. So what does all that mean and how does this work? That's what I want to show you. All right, let me just put these away for a second, and I'm going to bring my serger over here and I'm going to set it up so you can see what's happening. I'm going to take off my my presser foot so you can really see what's happening, and I'm going to clear my threads so nothing is in the way. Okay, and then I'm going to show you how this works. All right, you can see I've taken my presser foot off, and I think another thing I'm going to do here is, to make it even clearer for you to see, I'm going to put my knife down. That way there's going to be nothing in the way as I show you how this works. All right, so first let's talk about what is the adjustment doing. The micro thread control feature moves the stitch finger left or right. So that means, and what I mean by that is, it's going to move the stitch finger closer to the needles or farther from the needles. And just in case you're not sure what the stitch finger is, it's this little guy right here. Okay, and usually you're concerned about the stitch finger when you're doing a rolled hem, for example. You would disengage it. So let me show you that. So it's engaged right now. I'm going to pull the lever back and disengage it. See how it disappears? And now it's back. Okay, so the purpose of the stitch finger for overlock stitching is to support the edge of the fabric and give the threads a supportive edge to wrap around when it's forming the stitch as it's cutting the edge of the fabric, and then the looper threads are protecting the, the cut edge of the fabric. The micro thread control allows that stitch finger to move right and left. So right now it's in the neutral position. So I'm going to put it into the minus position and watch what happens. See how it moved in towards the needles? Okay, and with it moved in towards the needles, that's when I got this perfect stitch here, because the thread, the edge in which the thread is wrapping around was moved in slightly. So it gave a closer to the needle edge for those looper threads to wrap around. Okay, now let's put it back on neutral. Now you see if I put it back on neutral, which it's the little lever right in front of the stitch finger, disengage or get engaged control. All right, let me just put it back to neutral. Okay, so now it's at neutral again. And then I'm going to put it on the plus side and watch what happens. See how the stitch finger moved all the way out, as far away from the needles as it can get. Okay, so now my stitch finger is all the way as far as it can get from those needles. And you can see if I put the sample that I sewed while it was in that position, you can see that those looper threads, as it was sewing, was extended past the edge of the fabric, basically. So instead of the looper threads forming on the edge of the fabric, it was forming on the stitch finger, which is now a little bit extended past the edge of the fabric. In reverse, if you look at your seam and the fabric looks like it's shoved in there, almost like toes like curling against the front of a sneaker, and it's bumped up, you could use the MTC to allow the fabric to lay flat by pushing the MTC control to the plus and moving that stitch finger away from the needles. Now there's one other thing I want to show you guys. There's information about the limitations of this adjustment, and I want to explain why there are limitations. The first thing is, if you move your knife in the very narrowest setting between 5 and 6, then the minus direction for the MTC is very limited. And I want to show you why that is. Okay, so right now my knife is, my cutting width is set at 6. I'm going to bring it down all the way to 5. Okay, so the knife is very, very close to the stitch finger. So really, in stitching a seam that's narrow like this, the adjustment becomes very small, because as you adjust your cutting width, the stitch finger moves along with it a little bit. So when you're at the narrowest, there's not a lot of room for the stitch finger to move in the minus direction. So let me show you. I've got the cutting width all the way down to 5, and then I'm going to put my MTC to the minus, and you can see it just has a very minimal adjustment here. So it just moves a slight bit. And then in reverse, if I move my cutting width all the way up to 8 or 9, watch what happens to my stitch finger. So in addition to moving the knife away from the needles, watch the stitch finger carefully. See how the stitch finger is also moving? Okay, see? So part of widening your cutting width is the stitch finger moving out to support the wider distance between the needle and the blade. So, okay, so see, here I am at 9 now, and if I were going to try to adjust the micro thread control to the plus, look what happens. See, it just has a very little bit of adjustment there. versus if I go to the minus, look how big the adjustment is. There's a lot of wiggle room in that direction because the cutting width moved the stitch finger away from the needles. All right, so that's just another fun thing for you to play with. And I really think if you take some time and, check out, play with it. Get yourself a piece of fabric, stitch it with a 6.0. Start with 6 because that's right in the middle. See how your stitch looks, and if the looper threads are hanging off your fabric, try moving the micro thread control in the negative direction. If your fabric looks like it's pushing against those looper threads at the cut edge, try putting the micro thread control in the plus direction and see what it does for you. I think you'll find that having this option to control the quality of your stitch is a little bit easier than fussing around with the thread tensions and so on and so forth. So I think this is a very cool little feature on this serger, and I think it's important if you own a machine, take advantage of the features it has, and this is a really good one. So please, if you have any questions or comments about using the micro thread control, post them below and I will help you. I hope you're enjoying these Bernina L460 serger videos. If you own one of these sergers, and it really could be the L460 or the L450, and you have a question about something specific to the machine, please post it below and I will add it to my topic list. I really love to do subscriber Q&A. So thank you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next Sunday for another episode of the Bernina L460 Serger Manual.